My name is Daniel. I'm 32 now, but what happened to me took place when I was 17. I still can't fully explain it, and believe me, I've tried everything: therapists, pastors, even a native healer. Nobody has been able to give me an answer that makes sense. This happened deep in the Appalachian Mountains, near a nearly abandoned little town called Shawnee in southern West Virginia. I was living with my grandfather at the time. My mom had fallen ill and had to move into a long-term care facility. My grandpa was a tough old guy, Vietnam vet, no nonsense, didn't believe in anything he couldn't shoot or pray away. But even he got weird after what went down. Let me start from the beginning. My grandfather had a routine, hunting at the crack of dawn. I mean like 4 a.m. He'd head up the hill with his rifle and disappear into the woods. Sometimes he'd take the dog, a blue-tick coonhound named Boone. But on this particular day, Boone refused to leave his doghouse. He was trembling, curled up tight in the corner. I'd never seen him act like that. My grandpa glanced at him, spat on the ground, and muttered, "Damn dog smells a bear." But it wasn't a bear. He left anyway, alone, and he didn't come back. At first, I figured he was just running late. But when noon came and went, I got worried. I grabbed my jacket, took a bottle of water, and followed the trail he always used. At first, everything was normal. The forest was quiet, smelled like pine and wet dirt. But once I reached the clearing where he usually set up camp, I could tell something was wrong. There was a strange smell in the air, like raw meat but old. That thick, sour stench of something dead baking in the sun. I called out for him. Nothing. I stepped into the clearing. His gear was there. His backpack. His rifle leaned against a tree. But no sign of him. What really got me? The food he brought, some sandwiches wrapped in a dish towel, was still sitting on the log where he usually ate. Untouched, but the edges were dry and curled up like they'd been left out for a while. Hours, maybe days. Then I heard it. A whistle. Coming from deep in the woods. Soft, off, like someone trying to mimic a bird call and doing a bad job. Whistle, pause, and then I heard his voice. Daniel, but there was something wrong with it. It was like someone trying to copy his voice, but not quite getting it right. The tone was just off. Daniel, come here. I froze, couldn't move, could barely breathe. And then I saw it, behind the trees. A shadow, tall, thin, the face. I can't even describe it. It was like it didn't have a face at all. Just two black holes where I should have been. The skin was pale, almost see-through. And the worst part? Its feet weren't touching the ground. It was floating, and it kept calling. Daniel, I found a rabbit. Come look. Same voice as my grandpa, but it wasn't him. I ran. I ran harder than I ever had in my life. Slipped, busted my head on a rock, nearly passed out. By the time I made it home, Boone was still in his doghouse, but now he was howling, low and steady, staring at the woods with wide, unblinking eyes. My head was bleeding. I wrapped it with an old t-shirt, waited until nightfall. No sign of my grandfather. Next morning, I called the county sheriff. They brought dogs, search teams, even a helicopter. They found the clearing, found the rifle, but not him. Never did. The official story? He got lost, maybe fell, or was attacked by an animal. But what about the voice? The floating thing? The sandwiches untouched? I started digging, went to the local library, just a dusty room with 3 shelves and a half-asleep lady behind the counter. I found an old book about Shawnee tribal legends from the area. One passage hit me like a punch. The Shawnee believe in a spirit that hides in the hills, called the One Who Echoes. It has no true form, so it mimics the voices of those who are lost, luring others in. Its arrival is always marked by the smell of death and a broken whistle. It broke me. I went back to the woods dozens of times, armed, camped out in that same clearing. I screamed. I cried. I begged for answers, but I never saw it again, until 10 years later. One night, I get a letter. No return address, no stamp, just my name in blue ink. Inside, there was an old photo. It was my grandfather standing in the clearing. But behind him, something was off. A white blur, stretched out, with 2 dark spots where eyes might have been. And on the back of the photo, written in shaky handwriting. It's still wearing me. I don't go back there anymore, but sometimes when I'm alone at night, I hear that broken whistle again. Not loud, just enough to freeze me in place. And then his voice calling my name. This happened when I was 24. I'm 38 now, and I still don't like talking about it with most people. They either think I made it up or that I lost my mind for a while. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. At the time, I was living alone in a rental cabin just outside Hot Springs, a small town in the mountains of North Carolina, right on the edge of the Appalachian range. The house was simple, wooden, a little rundown, but super cheap. And that was all I could afford while finishing a 6-month internship at a rural clinic nearby. The house had a basement, but the entrance was on the outside through a small wooden hatch around the back. I never used it. It was dark, damp, full of cobwebs. I went down there once when I moved in, just to stash some boxes of books and painting supplies. Then I locked it and forgot about it. The weird stuff started happening around the 3rd week. I began hearing noises at night. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, but not coming from upstairs. From a basement. At first I thought, raccoons? Possums? That area was full of wildlife. But the sound was different. Heavier, like someone walking in circles down there. Barefoot. The first time I brushed it off. But the second time, I got up, grabbed my phone, and walked to the back door. I pressed my ear against the basement hatch. Silence. Then suddenly 3 knocks. From the other side. I swear on everything. That was a response. I ran back inside, locked every door, and spent the night holding a kitchen knife. The next day, I called the property owner, an old man named Mr. McAllister. He was in his 70s and not exactly friendly. When I told him about the sounds, he just said, "Don't worry about it. The basement's empty. Just ignore it." And then he hung up. That rubbed me the wrong way. Ignore it? That's not how normal people react when a tenant says someone might be in the basement. That night, the sounds came back. But this time, something new. A voice. Low, raspy, repeating something over and over. Words I couldn't make out, like chanting or mumbling. I crept to the kitchen window that faced the backyard, and I swear I saw a light coming from the cracks of the basement hatch, like a lamp was on down there. But that basement had no electricity. I grabbed my keys and drove to Rachel's place, a friend from the clinic. Slept there that night. The next morning, we both went back to my house. Daylight. Safer. Everything looked normal. No signs of a break-in. But when I opened the back door, there was something new. Something that hadn't been there before. A symbol on the basement floor, drawn in charcoal. A circle with strange shapes and markings inside it. Like something out of an old ritual or cult. Rachel thought maybe some bored teenagers had snuck in. But who breaks into an isolated house in the mountains just to draw symbols in charcoal and leave? I called the sheriff. He came out, took notes, looked bored, and said unless something was stolen or someone got hurt, there wasn't much he could do. That night, I stayed at the house again, with every single light turned on. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again. But this time, not from the basement. From a back door. I walked to the kitchen, slowly. Peeked through the peephole. Nothing. I took a step back. Now it was coming from the front door. I rushed to deadbolt the lock and peeked through the curtain. There was someone standing in the yard. Still, head tilted ever so slightly, like they were watching me. It looked like a man, or something like a man. Tall, skinny, wearing an old flannel shirt and mud-covered pants. The face, it looked smeared like someone had wiped grease over it. All I could make out was a grin, but not a normal grin. Too wide, too tight, like it hurt to smile. I couldn't move, not until my phone buzzed in my hand. It was Rachel. I answered, shaking. Before I could say anything, she said, "Marta, are you home?" "Yeah, why?" "I just woke up from this horrible nightmare. There was someone in the basement of your house, a man, and he was watching me, through you." The call dropped. I looked out the window again. The man was gone, but now the basement hatch was open. I didn't think. I just ran, got in my car, locked the doors, and drove back to Rachel's. I stayed there the rest of the night, crying like a child. Next morning, I went back with the sheriff. The hatch was closed again, locked, no sign of forced entry. But in the basement, the boxes I'd left were now stacked neatly in the middle of the charcoal circle. And on top of them was something I hadn't seen before, a photo of me, cut out from an old yearbook. I didn't even remember owning that photo. And on the back, written in red ink, "The house is his." I left that day, took only what fit in my car. 2 weeks later, I handed the key back to Mr. McAllister. I asked him if he knew anything. He stared at me for a while and just said, "I told you to ignore it." Later on, a neighbor told me the house had been empty for nearly 15 years before I moved in. The last person who lived there vanished. Just gone. No trace. The basement had been sealed by the family for decades. McAllister only reopened it recently to rent the place out easier. Since then, I never rent anywhere with a basement. And sometimes, when the house is too quiet, I still hear those knocks. This happened to me and my brother back in 2012 in a place called Dismal Creek in southwest Virginia, right in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. For those who don't know it, Dismal Creek is part of the Jefferson National Forest. It's remote, tons of narrow trails, cold streams, steep ridges, and woods that feel like they were forgotten by time. Beautiful, sure, but if you spend enough time out there, you know something about that area feels off. My brother Kaio and I have always been into hiking and camping. We grew up listening to our dad's hunting stories, and we used to head into the mountains 2 or 3 times a year. But this trip, this one was different. Something went wrong, really wrong. We left late Friday afternoon, packed with everything: tent, flashlights, food, water, and our camping knives. Our plan was to hike deep into a less traveled part of the Dismal Creek Trail and camp there for 2 nights. Our destination was a spot near a stretch of creek known as the Devil's Steps, a formation of rocks locals have named that way for generations. The trail up is steep and a little disorienting. The trees are twisted. The sounds bounce around in strange ways. We got there just before sundown, set up the tent, and made a small fire. Ate quietly, just listening to the forest, owls, wind, the occasional snap of a branch in the distance. Nothing unusual. Around 11 p.m., we put out the fire and went to sleep. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside the tent. Not animals, not the quick, darting movements of a raccoon or fox. These were slow, deliberate, like someone walking barefoot on wet ground. I didn't move, just listened. My brother was still asleep. And then came the sound. One knock, then another, then a third. 3 dull knocks, like someone hitting a tree trunk. But the rhythm was strange, not random, like it meant something. Then silence. Next morning, I told Kaio. He said he didn't hear anything, but he did have a weird dream. He said someone came to the tent and asked him to step outside. But the voice sounded like our dad's. Our dad had died in 2009. I laughed it off, tried to move on. Maybe it was just the woods messing with our heads. That evening, before turning in, we explored a little farther uphill. We came across a small clearing with a big, old tree. The trunk had carvings, faded symbols like letters, but not in any language I've ever seen. Beneath the tree, someone had stacked stones in a very deliberate way, like an offering. We took pictures, joked about it, and went back to camp before dark. But I won't lie, I had a bad feeling in my gut. That night, we went to bed early. Around 3 a.m., I shot awake to the sound of the tent being pulled, like someone was tugging on one of the stakes outside. Hard. I yelled for Kaio. He jolted awake and grabbed the flashlight. "There's someone out there," I whispered. He pointed the light at the flap. Nothing, just dark woods. Then it happened again. Closer this time, just outside the tent. Kaio yelled, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice, coming from somewhere in the trees. Low, drawn out. Can I come in? Just that. Can I come in? The way it was said, flat, emotionless. We didn't wait. We grabbed our gear and bolted. Flashlights in one hand, knives in the other. We didn't stop. We didn't talk. Just followed the trail back to the car in total darkness. And every time we thought we'd gotten far enough, we heard those 3 knocks again. Never running, never chasing, just there. We reached the car around 4 a.m., locked the doors, and stayed put until daylight. I should have just left everything behind. But right after sunrise, I went back to the camp to grab what we'd left. When I got there, the tent was still there, but it had been taken down. Carefully, each stake pulled out and placed beside the canvas, like someone had packed it up for us. And in the middle of the clearing, 3 stone piles. Each one had exactly 7 stones, and on top of each pile, a human tooth. I haven't gone back since. I did some digging afterward. Turns out, the native tribes who once lived in that region believed in a spirit that lived near cold water and stones. A guardian, one that didn't like uninvited guests after dark. Legend says it always makes its presence known with 3 knocks, a warning. The first night it warns, the second it invites, the third it comes in. We got lucky, but now anytime I'm deep in the woods and I hear a strange, repeated sound, I stop and count. 1, 2, 3. So, would you spend a night in the Appalachian Mountains? If you enjoyed these stories, hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which one creeped you out the most. And if you've got a true horror story of your own, send it to my email. It might just be featured in the next chapter. See you in the next video. Stay safe out there, and be careful what you listen to at night.